Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. This is Bill Backrack, and on behalf of myself and my team and everybody at Insurance WebEx Insider, we're happy that you're able to join us today. We appreciate the fact that there are many things you could have chosen to do with your time today, so the fact that you've made this investment of your time and your energy speaks volumes about your commitment to not only elevate your client value, but also to grow your business, and hopefully to make the end of the year strong and prepare yourself to make 2017 your best year ever. So the subject of today's webinar is how to master client acquisition in the new world of DOL fiduciary standard, digital advisors, and the many other industry disruptions that are happening. Just by way of a little bit of background, essentially what I'm going to share with you today are some of the insights that we've learned and some of the things that we teach some of the top advisors in the world. You may or may not be aware, but we have a very high-level training and coaching program where financial advisors from all over the world invest $5,000 per month over a 4-year time frame in order to build an ideal client community which creates for them their ideal business and their ideal life. And so essentially we've learned a lot about client acquisition, client service, leadership, and time priority and calendar management. So all of the insights that you'll be learning today are sort of battlefield tested, if you will. You know, real things that real advisors are using to be enormously successful. Now, this particular group of advisors who are in that program that I mentioned are all building relatively small clienteles with people who are paying them, more money than average. So the minimum fee is $36,000 per client, and they are working with no more than 50 clients. And so that's their particular business model. So these ideas are proven in that sense. And of course, these same principles will work across any business. But if you aspire to work with people who are more financially successful, who are paying you higher fees, and you'd like to have maybe a little bit of a simpler business, I think you'll be particularly interested in what we talk about here today. So you'll also notice that there'll be lots of time for a Q&A. So you can see on your GoToWebinar control panel, there's a questions bar. So you can open that at any time, type your question in. We obviously have way too many people on this webinar just to open up the phone lines. So the way we take questions is through that GoToWebinar control panel. And I'll just periodically look over at the questions, and I'm happy to answer questions throughout the webinar today. We don't have to just wait until the end. All right, so the picture of this woman that's on your screen right now, that is Senator Elizabeth Warren, and she was the driving force behind the DOL fiduciary standard. Now, it's not my goal today to do a deep dive into the DOL rule and how this fiduciary standard is different than the RIA fiduciary standard. There's certainly plenty of content out there about that. So I'm just going to cover a couple of the highlights and then talk about the opportunity that this creates. Right? So while a lot of people are afraid of the new DOL rule and are concerned about some of the legal hoops that you have to jump through, the reality is that this creates a tremendous opportunity for advisors like you who would like to go out and essentially steal, or maybe you prefer the term rescue, the best clients from other advisors who maybe are not quite as in tune and staying focused on their business and have allowed themselves to be distracted by some of these details. So as I mentioned, there'll be lots of time for questions. Use the GoToWebinar control panel to submit your questions at any time. So just a few of the implications, sort of the higher level implications of the DOL rule, is that it's being enforced with sort of bigger, badder, meaner, and more public lawsuits. And so a lot of advisors, I think, are misinformed, and they think that, oh, this is going to be enforced by FINRA or the SEC. So the reality is that it's being enforced by the plaintiff's bar. So it essentially opens you up to not only having to defend yourself in a lawsuit rather than arbitration, but it also opens you up to class actions lawsuits, which is why so many people are concerned about it, because it can be very expensive, very, very public. So making a mistake in this area, the consequences have been elevated significantly. So another implication is, of course, there'll be some advisors who are leaving the business. So whenever the standards are raised, whenever the rules get tighter, you just have some advisors who say, screw it, I'm just going to pack it in and either go do something else or retire. So another implication is that you're seeing a movement to more employee advisors. So many advisors are sort of seeking the shelter of being an employee. There are some other reasons why that's the movement. So you're seeing a movement to more employee advisors. You're also seeing a movement away from assets under management, percentage, and commissions to more fixed annual fees for planning and advice. And we'll talk more about that implication and how you can capitalize on that. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about how you structure your business that way if you want to do that. So you'll also, of course, see a continued decline and flattening of fees and commissions. So ever since you've been in the business, fees and commissions have been declining. And so they just continue to decline. And the question that some people ask is how low can they go? Well, they could go to zero. We could live in a world where the only way you get compensated is by your clients paying you directly. In other words, they pay you a fee for planning, they pay a fee for advice. We could be moving toward a world where there is no percentage for AUM, there are no commissions, and essentially you get paid whatever you and your client agree to pay you for the value of what you do. So I'm not saying it's definitely going to end up there, but it's certainly moving in that direction, and quite a few people who are smarter than me think that's exactly where it's going. So you're also seeing a homogenization of products, so less choice, fewer options. So every executive that I know who's at the sort of the top of the food chain, the C-suite, if you will, of all the major firms, at least the ones that I know and talk to, which are quite a few, they are simplifying their product list. All right, so fewer mutual funds, fewer annuities, fewer alternatives. They're basically saying we just don't need this many, and having this many is more complicated and more expensive, and so you're seeing a homogenization of products, less choice, and fewer options. It also seems to be the consensus among the smartest advisors I know, the smartest executives I know, that real financial planning will rule the world. And we can talk more about why that is, but of course if you're already there, if you're already a person who's doing real financial planning, then you have a big advantage. If you're not currently doing real and comprehensive financial planning, then this is a transition that you'll want to make as quickly as possible to capitalize on the opportunity. Rick Edelman was recently quoted in Financial Advisor magazine as saying within 10 years, half the advisors in the industry will be gone, and the DOL rule is a big part of the reason. So the question is that good news or bad news? So I don't know that Rick is exactly right. What I do know is Rick is a pretty smart guy who has his finger on the pulse of the business, and so I would agree that there will be fewer financial advisors in the future than there are today, and that the DOL rule is part of that. And so if you think about it, that's pretty cool. I mean, wouldn't it be great to be in a business where some significant number of the people in the business, your so-called competitors, are leaving the business? So the faster they leave and the more sort of aggressive they leave, like running for the exit, the more of a vacuum that it creates for all of their clients, or it sort of puts all of their clients in motion. And so whenever a client is forced to change advisors, it creates an opportunity for them to be picked up by any advisor who might be have the opportunity to work with them. So to me, that's the big DOL opportunity. So many advisors have, many clients rather, have multiple advisors. And this is not cost-effective, time-efficient, or diversification. So every day a client has more than one advisor, that client relationship is at risk. And so any day could be the day that one of these advisors persuades the client to consolidate all of their business with them and fire their other advisors. And essentially that should be your goal. So if you're taking notes and saying, so what are some objectives that I'm establishing as a result of listening to this webinar today, I would say that would be a clear one. That would be to make sure that you go to all of your existing clients and engage them in a way where you can put an offer on the table that's compelling so that they would want to terminate their relationship with all other financial advisors and consolidate all of their business with you. So you can imagine what kind of a bump that would have in your productivity. And really, if you think about it, it shouldn't be much of an increase in your workload because you're already working with these clients anyway. So if you're getting paid a percentage of assets under management and their assets go from 500 to $1.5 million, it doesn't take you any more effort or time to I do the asset allocation for 1.5 million than I did for 500,000, but you just got a significant pay raise. So you want to make sure that you are the advisor who's persuading clients to consolidate everything with you rather than one of their other advisors persuading your mutual clients to consolidate everything with them. This is especially true because too many financial advisors have a relationship with one spouse or the other, and too often that relationship is with the man. So if you just think about your clientele, one of the key questions you want to ask yourself is, do you have an equally strong relationship with both spouses? And if the answer to that question is no, then which spouse do you have the stronger relationship with? And what do you have to do so that you have a strong relationship with both spouses? It's really quite a staggering statistic that 70% of widows fire their advisor within 12 months of becoming widowed. And so if you think about it, it's a pretty stupid business model to say, gee, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a strong relationship with the person, the spouse of the couple, if you will, who's going to die first. Right? And that's how many financial advisors, that's their business model. They have a stronger relationship with the man, and the man statistically is going to die first, which means that that relationship becomes at risk because you certainly don't want to be starting to build a relationship essentially at the funeral. So I find it interesting how many advisors are worried about the next generation of the money. And I often say, hey, don't worry about retaining the kids as clients because she's going to fire you after he dies anyway, so that's not going to be an issue. So it's very important that you have a truly comprehensive financial planning relationship with both spouses and that the wife is equally engaged in the entire process. And if you're saying to yourself, well, I've tried to do that, but she's not interested in the meetings, then my candid question for you is, why are your meetings so bad that she doesn't want to come? All right, so maybe framed a more positive way, what has to happen in those meetings so that both spouses are equally involved and both feel like they're really getting benefit from meeting with you? And so that's another one of the benefits about doing truly comprehensive financial planning is both spouses will always be interested in the conversations about the actions that are required in order for them to have their shared and co-created future. The same is true with the high net worth. I think it's interesting how many financial advisors seem to think that, well, those people have a lot of money, so they must be taken care of. And this is a picture of a high net worth individual. His first name is Alex. There are a couple of great videos on our virtual training platform where we have not only interviewed Alex, but Alex has actually become a demonstration partner on some of our training videos on how to connect with high net worth individuals and how to then move high net worth individuals from being prospects to actually being clients. And it's interesting because I met Alex on an airplane. And I just happened to sit next to him, and for whatever reason, we struck up a conversation. I asked him the same kind of questions I teach you to ask, and we sort of bonded. It turns out that we were flying from San Diego to Hawaii, and we both live in San Diego. And so we've developed a friendship, and this is a picture of Alex being interviewed at one of our workshops, just sharing very candidly, how he feels about financial advisors, why he sort of struggles with financial advisors he's worked with or attempted to work with or have attempted to work with him, and what you can do to appeal to high net worth individuals. And the point of his story is really pretty simple. Do not assume that high net worth individuals are being well served because most of them are not. So high net worth individuals are very available to be acquired as your future ideal clients. But of course, you have to have a good process to do that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. One of the things that Alex talked about is he said, I really felt like the only thing that advisors were interested in was my money. They sort of were looking at me through their asset glasses. And he said, I thought they were very good at presenting their investment management approach, but none of them asked me to bring my wife, Lisa. None of them asked me any kind of meaningful questions. None of them asked enough questions to find out that I have an autistic son, Zach. None of them really understood that I really wasn't looking for someone to manage my money. I was looking for someone to have a relationship with my family. So if something happens to me, it would be a seamless financial transition for my wife, Lisa, and my autistic son, Zach. So he said everybody was focused on managing my money, but nobody was really focused on having a relationship with me and my family. So that's a very, very valuable lesson. Are you focused on the money? Are you really focused on the people? And it's really the people where the focus should be in order to be more successful. And that's why all of our training, everything on our virtual training platform, everything that we do in our workshops and our ongoing coaching programs is really focused on the soft skills. So hard skills are basically the technical things, sort of anything that a machine can do. All right, so the technical element of managing money, the technical elements of doing financial planning and tax work and legal work and insurance work, all that technical work, those are things that machines can do, which is why you are harnessing machines to help you do those things. You don't actually prepare a financial plan with a piece of graph paper and a slide rule and a pen or pencil. Right? So if you don't even know what a slide rule is, that was the device that was used before the calculator to do complicated calculations. So you use planning tools, software tools. But it's not your financial planning software that makes you successful, because you have to have the ability for someone to hire you as a client before you can actually use any of these tools. So there's a clear distinction between your soft skills and your hard skills. And so your soft skills are those skills that facilitate you building a high trust relationship. Your soft skills are the most important part of your consistent and repeatable process. So soft skills are all embedded within what we call the 7 critical conversations to build and maintain a 7-figure business. And so I'll go into a little bit more detail about each of these 7 critical conversations and how they can be effective for you, not only generating a nice pool of higher net worth couples to do business with, but also converting a higher percentage of those higher net worth couples so they become your ideal clients. So we'll take those one at a time in a minute, but I'll preface this by saying it's really all about skill and confidence. And so, for example, you want to have the skill and confidence to talk to anyone, anytime, anywhere. I often get the question, so Bill, where do I find, higher net worth people to talk to? And I sort of chuckle when I get that question, because I'm often doing a speech or a workshop, or it's somebody who doesn't live in my town of San Diego, and I'll just ask the question. I'll say, so where do you live? And they'll tell me where they live, and I just ask, so where do the wealthy people in your town live? And everybody I've ever asked this question to can tell me, well, this is where the wealthy people live. All right, so who are some of the wealthy people in your town? If you just Googled sort of wealthy people in your zip code, there'll be a list of people that will come up along with the neighborhoods that they're in, but I don't have to tell you that. You already know because you live there. So what do the wealthy people in your community do? And well, they belong to these clubs, and they go to these philanthropic events, and they're running these particular businesses. So it doesn't take more than about 15 minutes to write down on a piece of paper, hey, this is where the wealthy people are in my community. So then the question is, well, if you know where they are, then the real question isn't how do you find them. The real question is, when you show up where they are, why would they talk to you? So do you know what questions to ask when you open the conversation? Can you talk to anyone, anytime, anywhere without coming across like a schmucky financial advisor, so that some of these people want to talk to you? And that's a function of skill and confidence, and that's a crucial, repeatable process to be able to do. Don't feel bad if you're not 100% confident about your skills in this area. There are very few financial advisors who really have these kinds of skills. And this is one of those areas where you can always improve. So by having the skill and confidence to talk to anyone, anytime, anywhere, you will be able to create more prospects and more clients. You'll be able to charge higher upfront planning fees. You'll be able to generate bigger ongoing fees for advice. You'll be able to inspire people to consolidate all of their assets with you, take action on all of your advice, insurance, annuities, estate planning, really fully implementing the advice that's generated from your plan, and then, of course, refer you to their friends, family, and colleagues. So I know a lot of people say, oh, that's nirvana. Well, yeah, I mean, why not make that your goal? So there are some people who have these skills, and you could be one of those people. So I agree it's nirvana, and here's what it takes to really be able to make that happen more often and more consistently. And that consistently word is important. So imagine what your life would be like if you were just adding 1 or 2 ideal clients per month. And an ideal client is someone who pays you quite a bit of money and is relatively easy to work with. So it's really time for you to get what you really want, but it's not going to happen by accident. So I'll walk you through the 7 critical conversations, and as I mentioned earlier, anytime you have a question, you can submit that question through the questions area on the GoToWebinar control panel. So critical conversation number 1 is mastery of the first conversation. So if you are just walking through life, you meet people. All right, so I mentioned that I met Alex, who's a very interesting and successful person, because we just sat next to each other on the plane. You know, we struck up a conversation. It led to us wanting to get together when we got back into San Diego. That ongoing relationship actually led to him being very receptive to me and asking him if he would actually help us create training videos for financial advisors who want to do business with people like him. So I've been to dinner, my wife and I have been to dinner with he and his wife. So relationships evolve. If you think about every single person you know, at some point they were a stranger. So you meet people at dinner parties, you meet people through events in the community, on the golf course, at philanthropic events. And so what critical conversation number 1 basically is how you open those conversations. What questions do you ask, and how do you manage the conversation so you can make a logical pivot to having a next conversation. So the goal is to actually leave these kinds of events or situations with agreements to talk again in the future, frequently a specific time, like a phone appointment, to talk again in the future. And then what we're talking about here is asking the right questions, listening with empathy, hearing what's the most important to them, and then being able to make an offer that's relevant to them. Right, so for example, why would Alex, who started out as a stranger I met on the airplane, be interested in actually helping us create videos to train financial advisors like you on how to better serve and acquire clients like him? Well, so one of Alex's core values that I discovered in our conversation, loves to help people, likes to make a difference. When I told him that I train financial advisors for a living, he honestly had nothing good to say about financial advisors and went through a litany of bad experiences that he had. And then I asked him for feedback about that. So what do you think they should have done? And he told me, he said, well, they should have asked me more questions. So I met with 3 very successful advisors that I was referred to, and as I mentioned earlier, none of them even suggested that I bring Lisa to the meeting. None of them asked deep enough questions to even find out that I had an autistic son, and all of them gave me a pitch about managing the money, which wasn't my primary motivation. And I said, so, Alex, I train financial advisors for a living. What would you think about the idea about sort of helping to fix the problem that you're describing? And so that's what I mean by making an offer that's relevant to them. And he said, hey, I think that would be fun. And so as I mentioned earlier, he's actually gotten involved in helping to help you be a more successful financial advisor and working with people like him. But that's an example of going through this process. The second thing that occurs is you're going to end up, scheduling and having some conversation on the phone, right? So what is it that you do on this phone call to continue the conversation? And then you're going to pivot to the next offer. And so it's on the phone that you're going to pivot to the offer where you're inviting them, and you could do this with existing clients or prospective clients, to come to your office with their spouse or life partner and all of their financial documents. So think about what would happen to your client conversion if your existing clients would come to your office, both spouses and all their documents, and if all of your prospects would do the same. So it's a function of knowing the right questions to ask, the right things to say, how to put that offer on the table. And so if you think about it for a moment, if I just asked you, and I do this a lot, so I know the answers to these questions, but I'll float them out to you anyway to consider. So do you believe it would be in their best interest for both spouses to come to the office? And I'm sure you agree that would be better. It would be better if both spouses were there. All right, so if we're going to have sort of a bigger conversation about your future, and we're really talking about financial planning and comprehensive advice and action items that will help you achieve your goals for the reasons that are important to you, then that conversation, that future, should be co-created with both spouses. It really isn't effective to have sort of one spouse represent the other. So when your meetings are about things that are, bigger than just investment management or insurance, then you'll find both spouses will be happy to attend the meeting. So both spouses, I'm sure you could come up with plenty of reasons why both spouses should come to the meeting, and now it's your job to articulate that. Now, what's the reason why it's better to have the meeting in your office rather than their home or office? And the obvious answer is, well, fewer distractions. Right? So you have created a place in your office, either your office or your conference room, where the phone's not going to ring, the dog's not going to bark, the baby or the grandkids aren't going to cry. Nobody's just going to sort of walk in and interrupt the meeting. So you're creating an environment. It's sort of like going to the movie theater. The reason we still like to go to the movie theater is because that's an environment that was really perfectly created to watch a film. The chairs are just the right comfort, the screen is the right size, the sound is the right sound, and so we like to go to that environment where we can have the best experience. Right? So, and then of course, why would they bring all their financial documents? Well, so that you can benchmark their current reality. So I know you could make a case for all these three things. It's just a function of getting more effective at articulating this so that they get in the car and come to your office with their spouse or life partner and all their documents. Then, of course, what's crucial is what happens once you're there. All right, so now you're at this face-to-face meeting, and everything you say and do moves the needle on the trust dial one direction or the other. So now you're picking up where you left off from the phone conversation to have meaningful conversations with both spouses. What are their core values? What are their tangible financial goals? Where are they now financially? So that you can really benchmark those three things so that when it's appropriate, you can execute critical conversation number 4 is a critical part of the initial client interview. So mastery of making an emotional connection. I'll walk you through each of these elements of this face-to-face interview. So there's the values conversation, which is really getting to things that are meaningful and emotional. So core values tend to be the emotional why, where goals are the tangible what. So most financial advisors are pretty good at saying, well, what are your goals? And you can help them with retirement and sending kids to college and buying a vacation home. But there's an emotional why that's behind that, and making that emotional connection is very, very important. And then when it comes to helping them define clear targets, it's really making their goals come to life, so that it's not just sort of a boring conversation about these things, but the goals really come to life. So by when would they like to be financially independent? How much money do they want to have net spendable in their financial independence? What are a couple of words that describe what they're thinking and feeling now that they are financially independent and work is completely optional? They don't have to stop working, but they could if they wanted to. So really bringing those things to life rather than just sort of working through a boring fact finder. That's the mistake that a lot of advisors make, is they sort of pull out this linear fact finder from their financial planning software, and it's very, very boring. It sort of feels like you're filling out a form rather than engaging people in meaningful conversations. And then the last thing that I mentioned is benchmarking their current financial situation. And so essentially a good meeting is very emotionally compelling. The three components are what's important to you, what's your emotional why, what are your goals, or your tangible what, and where are you now? And once you've got a clear benchmarking of their finances, clear goals and clear values, then you're in a really good position to put your offer on the table. Because what they're basically thinking is, okay, so how are we going to make this happen? All right, so that's what we want, that's why we want it, that's where we are now. And with the vast majority of people out there, whether they're financially successful or not, they don't have a financial plan. Right? So they sort of have bits and pieces of planning. So how are we going to get from where we are now to where we want to be for the reasons that are important to us? And this is where the rubber really meets the road. And this is critical conversation number 7, articulating your value promise and getting hired. To really put your offer on the table. And it's one of 2 offers. If it's an existing client, we recommend that you are meeting with your existing clients and engaging them as a couple in a bigger conversation about their future and having a bigger discussion about the value that you can provide. And then when you put this offer on the table with existing clients, to be able to answer the questions that they ask and talk about how much it costs so that they're inspired to upgrade the relationship with you. The other circumstance, of course, is to do this from the very beginning with prospects who are going to become new clients. The reason I put this picture of Shark Tank on the screen is because you want to be so skilled that you could answer the toughest questions from the most sophisticated people. So if you're putting an offer on the table saying, well, in the past what you've done with me is we basically managed your money, done a little bit of financial planning, and helped you with some insurance and estate planning. And now what we're talking about doing is elevating that to the highest level of the most comprehensive financial planning and financial services. So here's everything that you're going to get. Here's how much you're going to pay for that. What questions do you have? And being prepared to answer the best questions from the smartest people. So one of the reasons why advisors work with us at a very high level of training and coaching is because we practice all these things. And the goal when you practice is to make practice actually more difficult than when you're in the game. And so the best coaches, they don't just sort of simulate the game during practice. They try to make things actually more challenging. They make them more challenging. They make them more difficult. They like to run drills. So by the time you're actually in the game, no matter what happens in the game, it doesn't freak you out. And hopefully all the players are saying, gee, the game is actually easier than practice. So your goal is to be so skilled to be able to talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere, that no matter how sophisticated or smart they are, there's no question they could ask you that you couldn't confidently respond to. I'm not talking about handling objections. I'm really talking about being able to confidently respond to questions. And then when you're able to do that, when we survey financial advisors, we ask the question. So when you put your offer on the table and you answer the questions about what they get and how much it costs, there are basically 3 possible outcomes in that moment. So one is they could say no. One is they could say, we want to think it over. And the third is they could say, we're ready to get started. All right, so think about that in your own mind. When you put an offer on the table and you answer the questions, in that moment, what do most people do? Do most people say no? Do most people say, yes, we want to get started? Or do most people say, we're going to have to go think it over? And our surveys, the feedback is most people say, the highest percentage of people say, we're going to go think it over. And then the question is, so how many of those people who go think it over somewhere do they actually come back and become clients? What percentage of the think it overs actually become clients? So the question is, why is that? So part of the work that we do, we actually listen to recordings of live client meetings of advisors who are implementing our process. And in the beginning, what we find is advisors tend to over-explain, right? So when clients are asking questions, or when the advisor is saying, hey, this is what you're going to get if you hire us, what happens is they end up over-explaining. And there's an old saying that the confused mind says no. So you have to be really careful when you are articulating your value and answering questions that you answer those questions succinctly. Because if you give people too much information, the natural thing for them to feel that they need to do is, hey, we need to think this over. We've got to go process what you've been telling us and come back with an answer. The great financial advisors, the most brilliant communicators, have clients who do not need to think it over because the advisor helped them make a decision right now rather than leaving with a project. So what I mean by leaving with a project is if they couldn't come to a conclusion while they were sitting with you, they now have an action item, a project, where they've got to go, contemplate and reflect on the meeting and the offer and make a decision. And oftentimes the decision is just it's too much for them to process. There was so much information, and they're so overwhelmed, that you end up following up with these people for weeks or months or sometimes years, and they tell you, yeah, we haven't made a decision yet. And the reason is because they still have too much information to process, and they actually don't know how to process that information. So the most brilliant financial advisors actually help people in the moment make those decisions. So that's the essence. That's the high-level view of the 7 critical conversations to build a 7-figure business. These are the kind of skills that help you capitalize on all the disruptions that are happening in the industry right now. In just a moment, I will. I just saw a question, the first question pop up. So I'll jump over to Q&A and answer any questions that you have about what we've talked about so far, or anything that you think I might be able to help you with so that you can elevate your client value and grow your business and be DOL compliant. So before we do that, I'll just, let me answer this. I think there's just one question in the queue, so let me do that question. All right. This is just a comment that there's a little bit of background noise. So I'm not sure if there's an open phone line somewhere or not. So if you have a question, just go to the GoToWebinar control panel, and specifically, what questions do you have about how you can be more effective at any of these critical conversations? So to be so skilled that you can show up anywhere, anytime, with anyone, and convert some of those people that you meet into prospects, some of those prospects into clients, so you can use the disruptions that are happening in the industry as a springboard to being more successful. All right, so while I wait for the questions to come in, I'll just summarize a little bit of what we've done here. So the question really is, why should advisors change? I mean, basically what I'm proposing is a massive change in the financial services industry where people elevate from being asset gatherers and money managers and being, much more transactional to being truly comprehensive financial planners. I mean, really, if you take a look at your financial planning software, someone who facilitates a complete implementation of every element of the financial planning software. So the why the change should take place is because the DOL rule and fiduciary standard is really forcing you to document that your advice is in the client's best interest. And nothing will help you document that better than a truly comprehensive financial plan. The risk of failing to document is to find yourself embroiled, not just in a client complaint, but in a rapidly escalating client complaint, right? So in the old days, if one client complained, then it was a very isolated case that went to arbitration. In the new days, if a client complains, then the lawyer who's representing the client can go to all of your clients to find out if, basically to stir the pot and find out if other clients might have had the same situation, and that's how they build a class for a class actions lawsuits. It's an ugly business. You don't want to be on the other side of that. All right, so then there are the other disruptions. Digital advisors, declining compensation, client longevity, advisor longevity. And then, the one thing that I might disagree with when people say, well, hey, this is going to force a lot of advisors out of the business, well, my question is, well, can they afford to leave? You're sort of presuming that advisors are prepared to retire and that they are financially successful enough that they can leave the business and be financially okay. The other thing that's driving the change is the continuing decline of AUM fees and commissions. So you can increase your revenue by charging upfront and ongoing fees for financial planning and advice. So what should you change to? I've said it before, I'll say it again. Real financial planners doing truly comprehensive planning, advice, and accountability versus planning light, which is more about gathering assets and selling alts, insurance, and annuities. Actually getting paid for planning, advice, and accountability, getting paid an upfront fee and getting paid an ongoing fee for advice, fully utilizing your planning software. So we have a close relationship with Money Guide Pro. That's probably the financial planning software I know the best, and it's brilliant. And you know, all these financial planning software companies, they see the plans that are actually created. And so you know, the data is fairly embarrassing as to what the financial planning software is capable of doing and how most financial planners and financial advisors, how they actually use that software. It's a very small percentage that's actually being utilized. It's sort of like having a 12-cylinder supercar and you only have 4 cylinders working. You're really not getting the most benefit and value from that experience. Having deeper relationships with both spouses and life partners, moving to a more level compensation, and work with people who can pay more for financial services. You know, I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, the DOL rule is terrible because the implications are that sort of, middle America isn't going to be taken care of as well. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. What I do know is I can't remember a time I met a financial advisor who wouldn't like to move up market. Right? So every financial advisor we talk in depth to loves the idea of having 50 or fewer clients who pay significantly more money per client in order to make their business and their life work. So it's really, it's not your job, so to speak, to sort of, rescue an entire demographic class. It's your job to build a successful business and take really good care of your clients. So what we're really talking about is planning, advice, and accountability. This is a pretty powerful quote from the CEO of a major financial services firm. In the old world, we gave away the planning and advice and sold the products. In the new world, we're going to get paid for planning and advice and give away the products. And it has been interesting for me to see all the CEO meetings that I go to and the conferences that I attend and speak at, and it's amazing how many presidents and CEOs are saying almost exactly this or something very, very similar about the change that's happening in the industry. We don't know how long it's going to take, but the future looks a lot more like you're getting paid for planning and advice, and you're giving away the products, which is 180 degrees from what the industry has been. All right, so let me jump to answering a couple of questions in the queue. So the benchmarking of the goals, there are 4 elements to benchmarking the goals, Harris. So the first thing is the name of the goal. So you ask somebody, tell me about one of your goals that requires money and planning to achieve, and then they'll give you the name of the goal. So let's assume we want to be financially independent. Piece number 2 is by when would you like to be financially independent? And you actually get a month, a day, and a year. So it's very, very specific, which makes it more compelling. It brings it to life. So it isn't sort of this nebulous, well, when we turn 60 or, by the time we're 62 or 10 years from now. Much more compelling for them to say, so April 2nd, 2023. Much more compelling. And then the third piece of the goal is the amount of money. So how much net spendable money per month or per year would you like to have once you're financially independent? And then the fourth thing is, what are 2 or 3 words that describe what you're thinking and feeling now that you've achieved the goal? And so you're getting both spouses or life partners to talk about their feelings achieving the goal. We'd be relieved, we'd be stoked, we'd have more confidence about the future. So the more emotionally compelling your meetings are, the more likely they are to be inspired to hire you. The more technical detail you talk about planning and investment management and insurance, the more technical your meetings are, the less inspiring and emotional they are. Right? So there may be a technical element to what you do, but your meetings have to be very emotional and inspiring and compelling and preferably visual. All right, so another question in the, one question I have as I move to fee-for-service is, Judy, I'm sorry, your question got cut off there. Maybe it shows up a little bit later. All right, so Timothy, I'm sorry, Timothy, the question is, what is the cost? And I'm not sure what you're referring to. So if you can give me a little more clarity, go back in and, I'm just not sure what context you're asking the question in. All right, so the financial benchmarking, please explain the benchmarking a little bit more. Essentially what you do, and we have a process called the financial roadmap, and it puts all these critical conversations together. And so on this visual tool called the financial roadmap, you've got their values, their goals, and in the lower left-hand section of this big 17 by 22-inch visual are the benchmarking their current financial reality. So essentially you take their financial documents and you sort their financial documents and do a little bit of math. And what you're doing is you want to identify how much cash reserves do they have, how much insurance do they have, how much debt do they have, how much assets do they have that can be used to achieve their goals. So there are other financial documents that will be used after you're hired to actually do your planning work. So not every single document is part of the math exercise, but then essentially what they end up in front of them with is they see, okay, that's where we are now, right? You've got that much cash reserves, there's your debt, here's how much insurance you have, here's the money that you have that can be used to achieve your goals, here are your goals, this is what's important to you, and now you can put an offer on the table in context. So now you can put an offer on the table in context and say, all right, so we've come to the point where it's time for you to hire us to create a plan for you. Let me tell you exactly what you're going to get. So what we're going to do for you is create a comprehensive step-by-step plan of action to tell you how much cash reserves you should have and how to get there, how to manage or eliminate your debt. We'll take a look at your insurance and give you some advice about the right kind and the right amount of insurance for you. We'll take a look at how your assets are allocated and give you advice on how to allocate those assets so you have the highest probability of achieving your goals. And we'll essentially look at every single thing that can be considered that could be an obstacle to you preventing you from achieving your goals, or could be something that would help you achieve your goals, and we'll give you advice. And the impact of you implementing our advice is and then you move up what's called their value staircase. So you make the connection between hiring you to create a plan, bridging the gap between where they are now and where they want to be so they can achieve their goals, for the emotional payoff of their values. So that's a little bit more than what you asked for, but I thought I would put that whole thing into context for you. All right, so got several questions here, 4 or 5 questions about what we do, and if you want to get engaged with us. So I mentioned earlier that we have a $5,000 a month training and coaching program on a 4-year contract. That is not what I'm offering to you. I'm not suggesting that you would listen to a webinar and say, hey, I want to jump into a $240,000 program. So what we do have, if you're interested in, if what we're talking about here resonates with you and you want to make a further study of it, is we have a very powerful virtual training platform. And so I'll describe it on the screen. It'll only take a minute. I'm not going to turn this into a big sales pitch, but since you asked, I'll tell you. So it's a self-guided online virtual training platform, and it's packed with interactive training courses, video scripts, and demonstrations, and high-value resources to help you master the repeatable processes that are crucial to acquiring and serving clients. And so what we mean by that, what we mean by interactive training courses, is it's not just watching a video and downloading a script. So yes, there are scripts and you can watch training videos, but then there are actual tests, there are interactive videos, so you can actually build skill through the platform itself. So we use something called state-of-the-art gamification techniques and adult learning theory so that you actually want to stay engaged. The idea is that it's fun. So if it's more like a game, then you find it more fun to stay engaged and learn and get results. And it's also, it's very inexpensive. So I'll just put this on the screen. So we're obviously very passionate, and we believe that your competitive advantage is to do financial planning, to do better financial planning, to get paid more for financial planning, to get paid in advance for financial planning, to get clients to implement 100% of the advice from financial planning, and that doing financial planning is vital to being a fiduciary and or DOL compliant. And so we've got the people skills on the virtual training platform so that you can then engage people and be paid to use Money Guide Pro or whatever your financial planning software is. So you generate revenue from planning fees, advice fees, and all the other ways that you can be paid. And essentially it's organized into client acquisition, client service, leadership, and time priority and calendar management. And then if you're wondering about the price, it's $100 a month. So you have access to all of that content and more that I won't bother to get into today. That should be enough. It's $100 a month. So if you want to check that out, billbackrack.com at advisor-roadmap. All right, back to the questions. So once I do the financial planning initially, which is obviously valuable to the client in year one, is there a source out there that would list my value in year two going forward? If I'm charging a yearly fee, how can I justify it each year? Right, so, well, I can tell you how we do that, Judy. So in our higher end program, the minimum fee that an advisor charges to be in that program is a $36,000 annual flat fee. And we have advisors who charge as much as $100,000 a year. And the promise to the client is we're going to do comprehensive financial planning, and we're going to help you get your entire financial house in perfect order. So everything related to your finances is going to be in perfect order. All right, so way beyond your investment management, all your legal documents, healthcare directives, everything related to insurance, everything related to investments, insurance, tax, everything's going to get done. We're going to make sure it all gets done. Now, we're not doing all the technical work, but we're going to make sure everything gets done. So 12 to 15 months from now, your entire financial house is going to be in perfect order, right? So the question is, why do they pay the $36,000 fee the second year, the third year, the fourth year, the fifth year? And the answer is really pretty simple. So in our process, you're meeting with clients on a regular basis. And the purpose of those meetings is to hold them accountable. So you remember I used those three words, planning, advice, and accountability. So to help someone get their financial house in order and keep their financial house in order, there's an accountability element. And it's not them holding you accountable, you and your team of subject matter experts. You're going to get your part done. It's holding them accountable to implement. So once their entire financial house is in perfect order, you still meet on a regular basis. Could be quarterly. Our process is we meet with clients 3 times a year, every 4 months. And each of those meetings has a particular agenda. And the purpose of each of those meetings is the world is dynamic, people's lives change, and to make sure that the financial house stays in order. And I'll just give you one simple example. You know, it's not uncommon for people's relationships to change. You know, so they may have their estate planning complete, and well, actually, I'll give you a more specific example under estate planning than what I was about to give you. My wife and I, in our estate planning, we are fans of cancer charities. All right, so cancer has touched our lives. We think that's an important thing. I'm an avid cyclist. I was a big fan of Lance Armstrong when he was winning all those tours to France, but when, of course, Lance Armstrong's sort of empire crumbled, I wasn't so sure that we wanted to give as much money to the Livestrong Foundation as we had in our estate planning documents. So we cycle through everything once a year to keep it in order, and we made some changes to our estate plans based on that, and we shifted the money from the Livestrong Foundation to the Jimmy V Foundation. All right? So getting your financial house in order is important, but keeping in order is also important. And then essentially what they're doing is you're paying your fee because now you're the go-to person. You've become indispensable in their lives. They wouldn't make a move about their finances without consulting you, and that's worth the ongoing fee. All right, so We're a few minutes from the top of the hour. I always build in a little bit of cushion. Looks like we've got 6 or 7 more questions. I will make sure to get all the questions answered, and the answers to the questions will be on the recording as well. So what software to use, and what if you're not a CFP? All right, so I recommend Money Guide Pro. Just go to www.moneyguidepro.com. Their software is roughly right, I think about $1,000, a year. It is very impressive. I'm not saying it's the only good software out there. It just happens to be my favorite. And so get the software, go through their training course. When you get pretty self-explanatory. I mean, as you go through it, you'll see that it's very impressive. And imagine, just go through that and say, hey, if I really did all this for my clients, I mean, how much would that be worth? You know, 5 grand, 10 grand, 15 grand? I mean, go through that and imagine how much better off your clients would be if they actually had every element that Money Guide Pro financial planning software covers. And then your question is, what if you're not a CFP? Well, you don't have to be a CFP to very effectively execute financial planning software. Right? So the question is, can you execute the financial planning software effectively for the benefit of your clients? So I'm sure there are CFPs who are very skilled with their financial planning software, and I'm sure there are CFPs who are not especially skilled with their financial planning software. And I also know many people who are not CFPs who do a great job of financial planning and are executing and using their software very, very effectively for the benefit of their client. So there's certainly nothing that says you have to be a CFP to do financial planning. It's an optional designation. All right, so if you think it would be valuable, then go take the courses and get the designation. You don't have to wait for that, though, to become a great financial planner using great financial planning software. You're welcome. All right, so Benjamin asked the question, Bill, what's the best way to put your value proposal on the table at the end of the 7 conversations? So Benjamin, I sort of demonstrated this a minute ago, or a few minutes ago, but I'm going to do it again for you, and just bear with me for a second. All right, I'm going to pull up another visual here that I think you might find helpful. Okay. All right. So I mentioned this visual earlier. So in our virtual training platform, we teach the critical conversations with or without this visual called the financial roadmap. So you may or may not be aware, but we wrote a very popular and successful book called Values-Based Financial Planning. And one of the tools in values-based financial planning is what you see on the screen, and that's the financial roadmap. So as I mentioned, when you go to the virtual training platform, you can learn how to do this with or without the visual tool, the financial roadmap. So if you like the financial roadmap, you can use it. If you don't like the financial roadmap, you can learn to have these conversations without the financial roadmap. But just for illustration purposes, to answer your question, Benjamin, you finish the first critical conversations, and this is a way of visually seeing how the answers to those questions are illustrated. So these 2 staircases in the upper right-hand section, this is Lynn's values, and Ted's values. That's the values conversation, and these are values words. Notice the difference between the emotion and almost spiritual nature in some sense of their values responses and how they're distinguished from goals, which are much more tangible. So you've got values here, and then goals here. So values are the emotional why, goals are the tangible what, and then you did that benchmarking exercise, and now we have a single simple number in each of these 3 areas, all right? So just using that for perspective, I'll demonstrate how you put your offer on the table. So Lynn and Ted, what you're looking at is your financial roadmap for living your life on purpose. And we've come to the point in our time together where it's time for you to decide whether or not you'd like to hire us to create a comprehensive financial strategy for you. So let me tell you exactly what you're going to get. So first of all, we're going to tell you exactly what you should do in each of these 4 areas. We're going to tell you how much cash reserves you should have and how to get it there. We're going to tell you how to reduce or eliminate your debt over time in a schedule that works for you. We're going to take a look at every type of insurance that exists, and we're going to tell you 3 things. First of all, should you have that insurance at all? And second of all, if you should have that insurance, what's the right type and the right amount of each kind of insurance for you? Then we're going to take a look at how you should allocate your assets so you have the highest probability of achieving each of your 3 goals. So Ted, the achievement of these goals is the evidence that you've made smart choices about your money. You're experiencing a life where you have lots of choice. You've got that freedom of expression that you described. You're feeling that sense of fulfillment because you're making a contribution. You are living with compassion because, as you described it for you, love is a way of life. And you want to live a serene and simple existence. And for you, Lynn, the achievement of these goals is the evidence that you've made smart choices about your money because you know you're experiencing freedom. You've got variety in your life. You have a sense of balance. You're able to give freely to others. You can truly be the best you can be and experience that happiness and peace that you described. So the question on the table, Lynn and Ted, is would you like to hire us to create this comprehensive financial strategy for you? All right, so that's the direct answer to your question. You want to know how you do that? Sometimes the best way I know how to answer a question is to actually demonstrate how that would be done. So that's how that's done. And then what almost always happens, Benjamin, let me sort of move back here to this visual. All right, so now they have questions. So you put this offer on the table. Would you like to hire us to create a plan that will essentially actualize what is on your financial roadmap so you can have what you want for your reasons? And then they ask questions. The obvious question is, well, how much does it cost? And I can tell you from experience, listening to top advisors' recordings, that question could be answered typically much more succinctly and directly. So that's sort of the beauty of the flat fee or the upfront planning fee. How much does it cost? We charge $5,000 to create this plan. Would you like to get started? So you always answer a question and then ask a question to make sure that you answered their question or to keep the process moving. So you could always say, we charge $5,000 for the financial planning process. Does that answer your question? Right? We charge $5,000 for the financial planning process. Do you have any other questions? So you answer the question and then you ask a question that keeps the conversation flowing. And then they'll ask whatever questions they ask. You answer those questions succinctly and directly, and then you're prepared to execute the paperwork because you should anticipate they're going to say, yeah, we do want to get started. And the beauty of this is the vast majority of people that you would ever meet with, regardless of how financially successful they are, you will consistently notice the absence of a financial plan. When you have them bring all their financial documents in, they'll bring investment statements, they'll bring tax returns, they'll bring insurance policies, they'll bring estate planning, they'll bring all of these things. And seldom will they bring in anything that looks like a comprehensive plan, even if it's outdated. This is the huge opportunity to become a truly comprehensive financial planner who knows how to have these conversations, uses your planning software effectively. You can make a lot of money and help a lot of people. All right, so looks like another couple of questions have slipped in. So I see there are still lots of people on the webinar, so I'll get all your questions answered. So how do we utilize your services and processes? Also, does it include property and casualty insurance advising as well? So I guess the best thing I could tell you, I think the best start here, Tim, is if you want to engage with us, we try to make it really easy and very inexpensive. So the best thing is to jump onto our virtual training platform. I'm not to make it any cheaper. I mean, it's $100 a month. So if you just add one new client, if you just get one client who pays a planning fee, it's a very low bar to recoup the investment, and you'll see it's just loaded with training videos and examples of how to conduct the conversations that I've talked about here today, how to put these offers on the table, how to answer the questions, lots of content, and it's growing all the time. It's not just static, so every month we add new courses and new content. Every month we have a live Q&A session like this. This is just all Q&A with people who are implementing to answer their questions. So that's the perfect starting point. And as you continue to be more and more successful, we offer some workshops, we offer some training and coaching, but that's the starting point for that. So, and then your other question is, does it include property and casualty insurance advising as well? So the way we teach this is that you have subject matter experts. So we're not teaching you to be a property and casualty insurance agent, unless you already are one, which is fine, because we train a lot of advisors who are, they have property and casualty businesses. That's how they started, or that's what they're still doing. So if that's what you're doing, fine, then it definitely includes that. If you're not doing property and casualty insurance, in other words, you're not licensed to do that, you don't sell that, you still make sure your clients get the right amount. So through the planning process, there's an assessment. So how much insurance should they have? So what's the right amount for their automobile, flood, fire, homeowners, umbrella liability? So you may just be calling up the property and casualty agent saying, so I've given my client some advice, they have some action items, and I'm calling to, with them sitting here in my office, set up an appointment on their behalf so that they can increase their insurance so they have the right amount of insurance. So obviously these property and casualty people are going to love you. So there are a lot of things that you don't necessarily technically do, you just make sure it all gets done. I think this is a reason why so many advisors are migrating to the flat fee. All right, so because you may be thinking, well, why would I help them with their property and casualty insurance if I don't get paid? Well, gee, what about how far is this fiduciary standard going to go? If you're supposed to operate in your client's best interest, how do you ignore this part of their financial life? How do you manage their $3 million portfolio but not make sure they have adequate earthquake insurance on their $3 million home? And if that home gets taken out by an earthquake or a flood or a fire or a tornado or whatever, and it's not insured, well, they're going to have to take some or all the money out of their investments in order to rebuild. So you just set back their goals. So it's sort of an interesting world we live in right now, as this word fiduciary has continued to be starting to be used as the standard. How far does that really go? And, well, it'll go as far as the lawyers choose to take it and whatever the case law establishes. Right? So I don't think it's a cover your ass thing, though. I just think it's doing the right thing. So now you're being paid an overarching fee to make sure your clients are completely taken care of, even in areas where maybe you're not technically super competent. Yeah, okay, Michael's confirming. So the DOL does not forbid one from offering financial planning without the CFP. That's correct. Those two things have nothing to do with each other. The DOL rule is about the value that you provide your clients and how you're compensated and what's required to be disclosed. And it's a little bit tricky because it's really centered around retirement accounts, but how do you separate out retirement accounts from their non-qualified or non-retirement accounts? What are you going to say to a client? So, hey, in your retirement money, I'm going to put your best interest first, but for the rest of your money, I've got a lower standard. You don't want to be in that position at all. All right, so I think I might have answered this, Steve. Steve asked, what are the elements of your comprehensive financial planning value proposition? So let me just go. I'm going to bring up this other visual again. All right, so I'll share two visuals with you. All right, so first you do the financial roadmap, and basically the elements are everything. So what is everything? And that's why I encourage you to really go through, to take your spouse and go through the entire financial planning software process and really look at every single thing that's covered, and you'll see that's, in most cases, I can't vouch for every financial planning software, but your offer, the elements of your comprehensive financial planning proposition, is we're going to make sure everything gets done. So everything that has to happen so you can actualize your financial roadmap. So everything you need to do to achieve the goal, and every risk or obstacle that could prevent the goal from being achieved will be addressed. So for example, my friend Kevin Null, who's the president of Money Guide Pro, what he likes to point out when he's illustrating how poorly financial planners are using their financial planning software, he said, so there's an element in Money Guide Pro that addresses, preparing for healthcare costs that are not covered by insurance. And he said, so most financial planners, he sees hundreds of thousands, doesn't physically look at hundreds of thousands of financial plans, but every Money Guide Pro plan that's created through their software, they have sort of visibility to through their organization. So again, it's not that they look at every single one, but they look at enough of them to know that most people are sort of, woefully underutilizing the software. And he uses that future medical expense goal as an example. He said, so it's your job to bring this up. So if you then factor in, and he'll pull up the software and he'll illustrate, so if you don't add this in, it looks like these people are on track to achieve their goals. But if you add this predictable health care cost in their future, it blows up their whole plan, right? So the elements of comprehensive financial planning of the proposition is we're going to do complete financial planning. Everything that can be done and should be considered will be done and will be considered. And the way our top advisors put this offer on the table is they use these 3 bullet points. So the client value promise of values-based financial planning is that we will make sure that we align your financial choices with your most important goals and your most deeply held values. You will get your entire financial house in perfect order and keep it that way. And you'll have a 10 level of confidence that no matter what happens in the markets, the economy, of the world, that you'll still achieve your goals. So those 2 things, I think that's the best way. Steve, I think that's the best way for me to answer your question. All right, coming down the home stretch, and we'll call it a day here in a few minutes. All these answers to these questions are recorded. All right, so let me go back here. All right, so with your system, do we sell the products recommended and take the commission on them as well as the fees charged for the plan? And the answer is that's your choice. So some people charge an all-inclusive comprehensive fee for everything. So their fee, whatever they get paid, and includes all of the advice, and they do not collect a percentage of AUM. They do not collect a commission on the insurance or the annuities or the alternatives or whatever the client needs to implement. The advisor, their trusted advisor, is not getting any other compensation other than that fee. That's one way to do it. You can also do it where you charge a fee for the planning process, and then you also get paid on helping them implement the plan. You could get paid a percentage of AUM. You could get paid a percentage of net worth. You could get paid a commission on the products and services that are implemented that you are, of course, licensed and authorized to collect the commission on. It's just a function of disclosure at that point. So how you do this is up to you. My big pitch to you, if you will, is that if you're not charging a fee for planning, just start there. I work with a lot of advisors through our virtual training platform, and I get a lot of questions about this on our regular coaching calls. And I've inspired a lot of advisors to just start small. Just charge a $3,000 plan, right? So just get comfortable to adding, do everything the way you've done it before as far as how you get paid for implementation, but now add planning and charge a $3,000 fee for that. And some of them said, well, Bill, what if I already do planning, but I haven't charged a fee? Then just go back to them and say, I've been doing a lot of planning for you, and I have not been charging a fee for that. And the reality is I really should be charging a fee for that because it has a tremendous amount of value. So from now on, you will also be paying a fee for planning. And we've done this for decades about helping advisors charge fees for these things. And I think the fear that clients are going to be pissed off because you're asking for an additional fee is unfounded. You'll find that the vast majority of your clients, if not all of them, will go, yeah, I'm happy to pay the fee. And oftentimes you'll have clients say, yeah, I've always sort of wondered why you don't charge for that because that's so valuable. We've appreciated it, but it's valuable and we're happy to pay a fee for that. Worst case scenario is they refuse to pay the fee and you can make a decision at that moment. But if you made that offer of 20 or 30 clients, and let's say you make that offer to 30 clients, and 20 of them agree to pay the $3,000 fee, and I don't know what happens with the other 10, but that's $60,000 that you weren't earning before for value that you're genuinely delivering. Okay, so for independent financial advisors, how do you envision giving away for free, i.e. how will suppliers get paid? Will their prices increase? Well, what we're really talking about here, Benjamin, is that they don't get your part of the money anyway. All right, so when you sell an insurance policy or when you sell a mutual fund or when you use an outside money manager, your fee is tacked on top of, their fee or their profit. Right, so if you bring the money to an outside money manager, and let's say that the money manager charges 50 basis points to manage the money, and you get 1% on top of that as your advisory fee, you're just removing your 1% advisory fee and instead getting paid a flat fee for planning advice and accountability, but the 50 basis points that the money manager gets paid, that money is still there. So nothing really changes for them. And then the same with insurance. So most insurance companies today, they have two versions of all of their products. They have a commission version and they have a no commission version, and the no commission version is to accommodate, the fee financial services side of the industry, which is growing rapidly. So it doesn't change the fact that the insurance company is still going to get paid for the insurance. Right, so what's being stripped out is a commission to you because you're being paid a different way. So in fact, not only will their prices not increase, but eventually when they have no mechanism, imagine what would happen if they sort of said, well, we no longer pay commissions to anybody. So we have this whole accounting system and all these employees and this whole sort of support organization to process commissions to people who sell insurance. Right, so if that whole expense went away in their organization, then ostensibly their prices could go down, but there wouldn't be any reason for their price to go up. I guess they could say, well, our cost went down and we're just going to make more profit, but they could actually lower the cost of the insurance because they eliminate an internal expense. So again, I don't really think I appreciate the question. It's sort of an insightful, structure kind of question, and I'm happy to answer it. But at the end of the day, your job is to take care of your clients, and so money managers are going to continue to make money. Insurance companies are going to continue to make insurance because you need the products. What seems to be happening in the industry is a progressive separation of compensation through the products and more direct compensation to you by the clients. And it's sort of a long time coming, frankly, in the United States. I mean, it already is this way in many other, developed Western countries. Australia, the UK, Canada's going through something like this now as well. So this is a worldwide movement to compensation going direct between consumer and advisor and not being sort of funneled through the products themselves. So now it's a choice. Ultimately, it may be the way the whole world. Ultimately, it may be the way the whole world operates. Okay, so the last one is not a question, it's just a comment, Rick. I appreciate that. Great information. I'll be moving forward with your services. Be happy to have you on board. We feel extraordinarily confident that for the whopping fee of $100 a month, that you will find extraordinary value on our virtual training platform. And we hope that you found extraordinary value from the hour and 22 minutes we have been on the line today for this webinar as well. So it's coming toward the end of the year. This is the time of year when we all tend to ask ourselves, so how did our year turn out? So we look back on the goals we set at the beginning of the year. Maybe you reflect on those New Year's resolutions, and hopefully you achieved all of them. Maybe you achieved some of them. And what I know for all of us is we all have room to grow. We all have room to improve. So take stock as you go into the holidays. Enjoy the holidays and reflect on your accomplishments in 2016, and start to think about how you can make 2017 your best year ever. Even if 16 was a great year, it's always fun to make it even better. If there's anything that we can do to help, we're happy to. On behalf of Insurance Insider WebEx and our firm, we wish you the happiest of holidays and a great new year. Make it a great day.